At exactly 7:12 a.m., 3 HOA board members in identical fleece vests, clutching clipboards like prized weapons, marched up to the front of my secluded log cabin, tucked deep in the smoky foothills. Without a word, they slapped a laminated citation onto the pine door like a battle flag, and proudly took a group selfie as if they'd just captured bin Laden himself. The only problem? My cabin wasn't even under their jurisdiction. In fact, it wasn't in their county. My name's Dustin Harrow. I'm 44, a quiet software engineer who ran from the noise and nonsense of Alia Estates in suburban Tennessee to claim a peaceful off-grid life 2 hours away. No Wi-Fi, no HOA breathing down my neck, just a wood-burning stove and a trout creek running past my land. I really believed I'd left the madness of suburban politics far behind when I bought that little slice of mountain paradise. Turns out, I was dead wrong. Back in Alia Estates, the HOA was ruled with an iron grip by Tamara CVY, a platinum blonde dictator in pearls with a personal crusade against uninvolved homeowners. I'd made the cardinal sin of dropping out of HOA Zoom calls after sitting through a 4-hour debate about mailbox glossiness. That single act apparently painted a target on my back. The harassment began quietly, with letters. The first one arrived on a Tuesday certified mail. Tamara accused me of illegal detachment from community oversight and claimed my off-grid cabin violated aesthetic unity protocols. I responded politely but firmly, explaining that the cabin wasn't even part of Alia Estates. Tamara fired back by slapping me with $500 per week in fines for non-compliance with visual expectations. I laughed. Who in their right mind would try to fine someone for a property they didn't even govern? Then things got weird. My neighbor Jerry Blandon called one afternoon, half amused and half alarmed. He'd spotted Tamara's husband, Roger, hovering a drone over my property line from the public road to spy on my cabin. Another neighbor, Sarah Hutchinson, later caught Tamara herself. Yes, Tamara, photographing my compost bin and muttering about feral landscaping. The woman had actually driven 2 hours into the mountains just to photograph my vegetable garden. The stunt escalated when I opened a thick legal envelope from the HOA's law firm. Inside was a lien notice against my actual townhouse back in Alia Estates. It claimed I owed $30,000 in unpaid HOA fees tied to off-site structures. My hands shook as I read it. They were actually trying to seize my real home for a cabin that had nothing to do with their HOA. That's when I called Clive Hennings, a retired JAG officer turned property lawyer. When I showed him the so-called jurisdiction map they'd attached, he nearly fell out of his chair laughing. Someone had literally taken a black Sharpie to the boundary map, crudely extending it to swallow my cabin property. It looked like something a bored kid would doodle. Clive immediately filed a countersuit for harassment, fraudulent lien placement, and trespassing. Cease and desist letters were sent to every board member. But Tamara didn't back off. She doubled down. Soon, I was receiving daily violation notices for everything from unauthorized wildlife feeding, because of my bird feeders too, improper waste management, for my perfectly legal septic system. Then came the twist. A local news station, Channel 7 News, picked up the story after Clive tipped them off. Their segment, HOA Leader Claims Control Over Unaffiliated Land, aired during prime time. Tamara, apparently thrilled to have a platform, sat for an interview with her pearl necklace perfectly in place and her hair shellacked to TV perfection. Then she whipped out hand puppets. Yes, hand puppets, to explain her theory of extended governance. She used a princess puppet for the HOA and a troll puppet for non-compliant homeowners. The anchor's frozen smile said it all. Within days, I'd secured a restraining order against Tamara and her HOA lackeys. The county sheriff with actual jurisdiction over my land, Sheriff Tom Garrett, issued a statement that made me choke on my coffee laughing. He said, "This land has no HOA and never will. Also, stop stapling laminated notices to trees. That's littering." He'd personally caught them during one of their ridiculous reconnaissance missions. Panic spread fast through the HOA board. An emergency meeting was called, led by a sweating Vice President Harold Simmons. Sarah later forwarded me the meeting minutes. Tamara, it turned out, had burned through more than $8,000 in HOA funds to hire a private investigator and book herself a week at a lakeside bed and breakfast just to spy on my cabin. The residents were livid. They demanded receipts. They demanded accountability. And they demanded Tamara's head on a platter. She stood at the podium, clutching it with white knuckles, babbling about protecting the community's values. But Harold dropped the bomb. Tamara had also purchased night vision goggles and a GPS tracker using HOA money. Even her most loyal supporters turned on her. The district attorney stepped in after multiple homeowners filed complaints. Tamara was indicted for fraud and misuse of HOA funds. Her mugshot, lip gloss flawless, hair a total disaster, was splashed across every local outlet. One newspaper headline said it best: HOA president goes rogue. During the trial, Clive presented a giant blow-up of the Sharpie-altered jurisdiction map as Exhibit A. The entire courtroom broke into laughter when he pointed to the pirate-style X. Tamara had drawn over my cabin like it was buried treasure. The judge had to call for order 3 separate times. The prosecutor, Ada Rebecca Morrison, was relentless. She unveiled evidence that Tamara had formed a secret Facebook group called Alia Enforcement Squad, recruiting 43 volunteers to take turns driving out to the mountains to photograph my property. Tamara's obsession went further than anyone imagined. She'd even set up a point system for her Alia Enforcement Squad, rewarding members for every so-called violation they documented. 10 points earned them a Starbucks gift card, paid for with HOA funds. One of the most devastating pieces of evidence came straight from Tamara herself. She'd accidentally live-streamed a nighttime raid on my property. At 2:00 a.m., she crept onto my land armed with a measuring tape and a clipboard. In the video, her voice was a breathy whisper as she told Roger they needed to measure the spacing between my garden gnomes to file it under expanded jurisdiction violations. She even had pre-printed citation forms ready to go. The prosecution called a long list of witnesses. Margaret Pelham, one of the elderly residents of Alia Estates, testified that Tamara had once knocked on her door with a PowerPoint presentation on a tablet, trying to convince her to sign a petition that would extend the HOA's reach to any property owned by an Alia resident, anywhere in the world. The slideshow had animated transitions and elevator music, like it was a corporate merger pitch. Then came David Krause, a landscaping contractor. He revealed Tamara had tried to hire his company to secretly transplant non-compliant plants onto my cabin property so she could find me for them later. When he refused, she offered to pay him under the table, calling it a community beautification grant. He still had the text messages, proof she'd offered him $2,000 to sneak purple petunias into my vegetable garden in the dead of night. When Tamara finally took the stand, she wore a navy blue power suit and her signature pearl necklace, trying to look like a martyr for community standards. But under questioning, her defense fell apart fast. She rambled about protecting property values and aesthetic integrity. When the prosecutor asked how a cabin 2 hours away could possibly affect Alia Estates' home values, she launched into a wild speech about aesthetic contamination and the broken windows theory. The judge actually rubbed his temples in visible pain. Cross-examination revealed even more. Tamara admitted she'd never visited anyone else's vacation property. When asked why she targeted me specifically, she coolly stated it was because I'd skipped the HOA potluck 3 years in a row and never participated in the bake sale fundraiser. She called repeated absence from potlucks a red flag for community detachment disorder, a term she had completely invented. The prosecutor then dropped a bombshell. Tamara had spent $12,000 of her own money hiring private investigators after the first 2 firms refused to touch anything outside HOA jurisdiction. The third one just took her money and handed her Google Earth screenshots. The evidence only got worse. Along with the fraudulent lien and the financial records, they uncovered emails in which Tamara discussed hiring actors to pose as code enforcement officers, complete with fake violation notices and made-up ordinance numbers. She had even filed false reports to the county health department, trying to get my cabin condemned. Perhaps the strangest exhibit of all was a thick, color-coded binder she'd labeled Project Rustic Compliance. Inside were hand-drawn maps and detailed plans to annex not only my cabin, but 17 other vacation homes owned by Elia residents. She'd drafted enforcement schedules, designed special off-grid violation forms, and on page 47, she'd drawn a crayon map of something she called the Greater Elia Empire, complete with little flags marking properties across 3 states. A forensic accountant testified next. Tamara had built a shadow budget inside the HOA's accounts, funneling money into categories like miscellaneous beautification and emergency aesthetic response. Over 18 months, she had secretly diverted nearly $40,000 toward her personal surveillance campaign. She'd even purchased a used van, painted it to look like an official HOA patrol vehicle, and slapped magnetic door logos and an amber light bar on top to complete the illusion. The verdict came swiftly. Tamara was found guilty on all counts: fraud, embezzlement, harassment, and abuse of fiduciary authority. Senior District Judge William Hartley didn't mince words. In 30 years on the bench, he said, he'd never seen such a flagrant, delusional abuse of HOA power. He called her actions vindictive, borderline psychotic, and an embarrassment to community governance. Her punishment was severe. Tamara was banned from holding any HOA role statewide, ordered to pay $50,000 in restitution to the HOA and $30,000 to me for legal fees and emotional distress. She received a 3-year federal sentence, with 2 years suspended, meaning 1 year behind bars and 2 years of probation, including 300 hours of community service, helping people navigate HOA disputes. But the judge didn't stop there. He ordered a full psychiatric evaluation and monthly therapy sessions, focused on power dynamics and boundary control. Her real estate license was suspended for 5 years, effectively ending her property management career, and she was prohibited from living in any HOA community for 10 years after release. The courtroom was dead silent as the sentence was read. Tamara's face drained from red to white to a blotchy, furious purple. She jumped up so fast her chair slammed to the floor. "This is a conspiracy against dedicated community leaders," she screamed. "You don't understand the importance of aesthetic continuity." As bailiffs advanced, she snatched her oversized purse and hurled her HOA president's gavel at the prosecutor, missing by a wide margin. 2 officers escorted her out as she shrieked about uniform mailbox heights and crumbling community values. Her final words before the courtroom doors slammed shut echoed through the chamber. "You'll all have mismatched mailboxes. And like it!"